Hi guys. I'm gonna type a little hello here. So today I'm a little bit frazzled because my computer battery has decided that this is the week that it's just going to give me all kinds of trouble. So it might be a little short if my computer battery does not make it. There's Tess. Hi, Tess. I'm doing super. And the other reason that I'm frazzled is because I was trying to get a whole bunch of pictures. I don't know if I got them all. But anyway, today I thought we would do a history story. So it might be a little shorter than usual. So I thought we would do a history story about a girl named Joan of Arc. And I don't even know why Joan of Arc, hi Jenny, popped into my mind. But before all of this crazy stuff happened, in my classroom at school, we were reading some medieval stories, like knights and ladies, and one of them had like a dragon in it, etc. And one of my students asked me, Miss Cheka, are girls ever knights? Right? Because in the stories that we were reading, there'd be like a damsel in distress, and then a knight, and the knight would fight and do stuff and usually be kind of goofy. Medieval stories are very, very goofy. But she wanted to know, well, are girls ever knights? And it got me thinking, right? So if you have never heard of Joan of Arc, I'm going to show you something. So you have possibly seen the movie Frozen. And in the movie Frozen, there's a song, would you like to build a snowman? And the sisters like run around the house and like look at all of these paintings. Well, some of those paintings are real paintings. And in one of them, here is the picture I was trying to find. In one of them, you can see that Anna, this is not like a great picture, but sort of right there, you can see the two sisters and then you can see this painting above them. Anna kind of says like, hey, Joan, it'll be better later. And it's a painting of Joan of Arc. And I have another painting for you, which looks like this. And it's kind of an awesome painting. So look at this painting, right? Isn't that neat? So we have this painting of this teenage girl, and she's holding a white banner, and she has a suit of armor. And that image is so famous that it's even like Elsa and Anna have that picture hanging up in their castle, in their house, right? That same painting, I had it in my head earlier because I don't know if you have ever seen a movie with the actress Zendaya. Like I know her because she's in Spider-Man movies and I like her a lot. But she went to a very, very fancy party at a museum. In fact, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, which is one of the best art museums in the whole world. And you had to dress up to go to this party, and look how she dressed up. Doesn't that look a lot like that painting? She has the haircut, she has a suit of armor, she doesn't have the white flag. So I think that's kind of a shout out to Joan of Arc. So just from these images, we know a couple of things. She's a teenager, she's a girl, and she definitely wore a suit of armor and went into battle. So who is this person? First, I'm going to tell you the story has a sad ending, just so you know. So here is the thing. Back in the 1300s, France was like boomtown, yay, super great country, great place to live for, if you're rich. But then they had a horrible illness, and it was called the Black Death. That's how you know it's a horrible illness, if it's called the Black Death. So it was a pandemic, like we have a pandemic, except back then in the 1300s, they didn't know about social distancing. They didn't know about germs. The doctors that they had did not really know a lot about the human bodies, and it would be hundreds and hundreds of years before people would invent microscope. So like in the pandemic that's happening now, we have really powerful tools. We know about social distancing, we know about germs. Our doctors are really knowledgeable in how to treat people and how to help people. But back then, they didn't have those tools. So people got really sick. And after the Black Death, France was just a total disaster. And so then in the 1400s, it's still kind of a disaster. And then on top of it, they have this war going on, right? So there's one side, they're like, we should be the king. And then the other side is like, no, 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 our guy should be the king. And then on top of it are the English who are in there and saying like, we should get everything. Ha ha ha. So a couple of things. Number one, if you're a prince in France, they call you the Dauphin, which I think is kind of hilarious because do you know what the word Dauphin means? It means dolphin. Mm-hmm. So if you are, and not all the princes get called that, only the oldest one who's going to get to be king. So if you are like, you got the king, you got the queen, you got little kids, one of them, maybe you've got an oldest son, you're like, oh yeah, this is our son, Louis, this is our son, Pierre, this is whatever, and this is our son, the dolphin. That's how you know that one is the one who's going to get to be king. So there's, this hot mess with all of these different sides, and there's one, and the reason that they call him the dolphin is because it used to be a common last name, which I think is so strange. But actually, if you think about it, we have animal last names too, like a lot of people do. Like for instance, Tess, your mom and I went to high school with a guy whose last name is Hogg, like Bowie Hogg, that's his name. But you can also have a last name like Fox or Hogg or, whatever. So in this case, you've got the prince, he's the Dauphin, and you've got this other side who's like, and you have the English. So big political things on like a country level. Well, meanwhile, in a little village, in a little town, is Joan. So Joan did not come from a wealthy family. She wasn't a princess. Her parents were not like hugely important people. They weren't generals. They weren't aristocrats, nothing like that. She's just like a girl in a village, not a huge amount of money. She didn't know how to read or write because back then people didn't think that it was important for, back then only if you were very wealthy could you afford to go to school and get an education and learn how to read and write. But even among the people who could afford that, nobody thought that it was important for girls to know how to read and write. So Joan didn't know how to read and write because she didn't have that opportunity. And she lived with her family in a little village. And so there's all of this like crazy war stuff, going all around her. But she's just like a teenage girl in the village. So she had this mystical experience where she would go and sit quietly in her father's garden, and she started to have visions. Visions. She said that she had visions and that God was speaking to her, and the visions told her that she should go to the city of Rouen and help the Dauphin, the dolphin, get crowned, and that would be her destiny. And she would lead an army, and if she led the army, then she would be, saving her country, basically. So, a couple of things. Number one, let's talk about symbols, right? So this is another Frozen still because I thought that this was so interesting when I saw this movie. Here we have, oh, no, we don't. Come on. Here we have Elsa, and Elsa looks like a little freaked out because she's like, I don't know, do I want this responsibility? Do I want to be queen? Do I, whatever. And she has a couple of symbols. So she's holding in her hand a round gold ball, like a sphere. That's called an orb. And in the other hand, she's holding a golden stick, and that is called a scepter, right? So if you are born into a royal family, then in order for you to be the king or queen, a couple of things need to happen. So one, you need to be the oldest. You need to be a boy. Two, it's not just enough that your dad, the king, dies. You need to be crowned in a special ceremony and given these symbols so that everybody knows, okay, this is the new person. They're in charge. So when I say let's talk about symbols, think about this. Think about it like a chair, right? I'm sitting in a chair. It's like, it's a random chair. It's a white chair. It's in my house, right? There's nothing special about it. But if I were to say only who's like a really important person, only the Queen of Texas can sit in this chair. I have made, is it connecting? But now I have made this chair special. I've given it significance. I've made it into a throne. And what if I say not only the Queen of Texas can sit in this chair, but I say you have to be, have like a special ceremony and then you can sit in the chair. Well, now it's a throne because otherwise the throne is just a chair. So if you say, okay, here's this orb, here's this scepter, you cannot be the King of France unless you have the orb, you have the scepter, and there's a ceremony that says like, okay, you're now the king, and then we put a crown on your head. Now you're the king. Then those symbols are really, really super important. And in fact, you remember when we read Alice in Wonderland, we learned the word corona, crown. Well, that's where we get the word coronation. Oh, you're sitting in your cardboard dome. Well, Tess, if you make that your special cardboard dome, then that might be your throne. So when Joan of Arc had these visions that she was supposed to go take the dolphin to this particular city to have the coronation with the orb and the scepter and the whole thing, it sounds random to us in modern times, but back then people would be like, oh yeah, that's so important. Because if he's going to be the King of France, then he has to have this ceremony. Just like Elsa had to have that ceremony, right? Look, there she is. She's freaked out, but she's doing it. Orb, scepter, crown. I have actually been to England and seen the orb and the scepter that the current Queen of England uses. It's like a big deal. They have like a little velvet pillow. And I did not see her throne, but it's her throne. So Joan of Arc, teenager, can't read, can't write, has this vision. And she starts going to, well, first she went to her, I think it was her uncle. And she was like, uncle, I need you to like take me to this city. And then I need to get an army. And I need to like lead this army and get the Prince of France crowned. And he was like, what are you talking about? And then she kept going to all of these different cities and just saying like, well, I'm Joan. I have this mission. You should give me an army. And at first they laughed at her. But she became a symbol, just like the throne, just like the scepter, the orb. She became a symbol that really inspired everybody because she did lead armies and she was like almost like a knight, right? So she really wore a suit of armor. She cut her hair. She would have a banner behind her, like a white banner. And on a battlefield, you can imagine that when there's all of these different colors and emotion, like, commotion everywhere, seeing like a really bright white, banner with writing on it and a young girl was really striking. And so all of these soldiers would feel really brave and say like, wow, if she's going to lead this army and she's going to be brave, well, I can be brave too. And sure enough, she led all these armies in many, many, many battles. At one point, she even got injured because she got shot with an arrow in the leg by a crossbow. So she was a really brave person. She gets the dolphin, the dauphin. She takes him to the city where he has to have the coronation. She gets him crowned, right? Orb, scepter, crown, whole 9 yards. He gets to be the King of France. And wherever she leads the army, they start winning and winning. And you would think that the king of France would be so grateful to her of like, wow, I don't even know who you are, because it was all of these kind of old men, and they were really all about power and who could be in charge, and how they could have authority over other people. And they thought like, first of all, Joan of Arc, she never, ever, ever said she did not want to be queen. She didn't want to have power. She just wanted to put the rightful prince on the throne. She didn't want power for herself. But when these kind of old men saw, like, wait a minute, look how these soldiers look up to her. Look how these people, all of these people in France, they look up to her, and they respect her. They're inspired by her. If she ever decides that she wants to be in charge, maybe people will listen to her instead of to us. And she has too much power. Girls and women should not have this much power, only us. So they were very threatened by it. So they arrested her. The British, the English, who were the invaders, arrested her, and the king, the Dauphin, he let him do it. He let him do it. And so once she was in prison, kind of that was it. She was under their control, and she never left the prison. So she tried to escape, like she, escaped out of a window into a moat. They caught her, they put her back, they put her on trial, and they kept trying to make her say terrible things, but they would like trick her with words to make her try and say like, oh, but I'm not. And they would try and trick her into saying these clever things, and they couldn't do it because she was too smart for them. And also, she wasn't interested in those things. And they couldn't figure out how this girl who did not know how to read and write, how she could be so smart and kind of outsmart them. And so finally, they just gave up and said like, well, we're just going to execute you anyway. And they did. So Joan of Arc died when she was 19 years old. She's burned at the stake. So that's why, there's hundreds of paintings of her. But in the paintings, she's always painted as a young woman, like a teenager. And it's because she died when she was a teenager. So Joan of Arc, she's a very brave person. There were women in the medieval world. She wasn't the only one who wore armor and fought. Some of them, their story ended sadly, like Joan. Some of them, it didn't. But all over the world, when you see paintings and statues of Joan of Arc, people are still to this day really inspired by what an unusual person she was, what a brave person she was. It's strange for us as modern people to understand what these visions that she had, but whatever it was, she had a voice that she really believed in herself, that it was her destiny to do this big thing. So in the city of Orleans in France, they consider her their patron saint because the Catholic Church has actually canonized her. She is a saint. And in Orleans, she's a very important person. And in the US, we have a city that is called after that city. So just like in England, there's Orleans, right? So if you go to the city of New Orleans in Louisiana, they also have a statue of Joan of Arc, and she's like an important person. So that is the story of Joan of Arc. The next time that you watch Frozen and you see that little bit where Anna, sings her song and goes past the painting and is like, hi, Joan, you'll know who that is. And when you see Elsa getting crowned, having her coronation with the orb and the scepter, you'll think about symbols. So are there any questions? Because I've talked for a whole long time. Okay. I mean, I don't recommend that anybody goes and like leads an army and leads a revolution, but I do think that you could be brave like Joan of Arc. So tomorrow, instead of doing a history story, I think we should do a little bit more like yesterday and talk about some language and some writing stuff. But anyway, I had a real fun time with you guys. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye, all.